Hello, folks. I see you're all streaming in. Okay. Good morning. Good morning, everyone, as you come in. Great to see you. I think we're going to give everyone 5 more minutes, same as we always do. Just give people an opportunity to have a look at their calendar. Remember they signed up for this. Remember they wanted to be here. Hop on the link, see what happens. In the meantime, how's everyone doing? I think we have a very international panel this time around. I think we're in a bunch of different places.
Well, I mean, you're helping with that today, aren't you, Roberta?
Well, I am. Yes. So I'm coming to you from Brazil right now. Jesse, you're in the UK.
Yeah.
Rich and Wei Kang, you're in Singapore. Is that right? Good stuff. Hey, folks in the chat, where are you? Would you put in the chat where you folks are coming from? Let's see if we can't get an even wider amount of the world set up. Got some folks from Rome.
Room.
Got Eric in Rome. Oh, Belgium. I'll be there. And I'll be back in Belgium next week, Guy. Or Guy, probably. That'll be interesting.
Got some more UK.
Always good.
And I think I'd imagine Rich and Wei King, between the two of you, you're covering a lot of locations normally. So how long have you actually been in Singapore versus just
Oh,
darting
me?
around?
I've been in Singapore for 3 weeks. And then
Ah,
headed to the
Okay.
US and then back to the UK. We'll be visiting Jesse sometime in September.
very good. Good to
And Wei
see
Kang
you.
was just in Switzerland,
So,
so he's an international fellow.
yes, but I live in Singapore. Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm trying to not travel these days. I think I've been burned by going too much. Oh, I've
I mean,
got
the level of it.
in the chat, Poland and Norway,
Oh, yeah.
Winchester, UK.
Folks from quite around the UK, I should say.
Yeah.
Okay, Lily doesn't count. We all know Lily. Lily's our team member over at the ODI. So is Precious. But great to see you guys. Been on holiday for a while, so I haven't spoken to either of you in a while, in a little bit. Odd that the first time would be over a webinar, but always nice. Okay, just gonna give folks 2 more minutes to start joining in before we get going. Yes, it's a good reminder from our ODI team. As we go along today, please leave any questions you might have in the chat. I'll be reminding you as we go again. So we will have a questions period at the end of the hour. Oh, I see Rich will be in Belgium next month. So will I. We get back to Belgium beginning of next week. Should be a good thing. Looking to be streaming in. 1 more minute. Let's see if we get one. Okay, just giving folks 1 more second. If you need to grab a glass of water, get comfortable in your chair. Be starting in just a second. In the meantime, oh, folks keep coming in. I think we're doing okay. That's nice. Mm-hmm. Okay. Seeing we're right at 5 past the hour. So what do you say we make a start? Hello, everyone. Welcome to our latest edition of Solid World for July 2026. My name is Roberto Brightman. I'm the ODI's community manager for Solid, and I'll be emceeing the event for the webinar this morning, evening, or afternoon, wherever you happen to be. Very happy to be joined today by Jesse Wright, our project lead at the ODI for Solid, and two wonderful folks from TNE, Rich Tong and Wei Kang, who we'll be introducing in just a moment. So for today's session, we have a pretty interesting lineup going. The main topic will be on SolidBot building apps via agentic commerce. That'll be a presentation from the folks at TNE. But before we launch into that, we're going to give Jesse a moment to just go over some of the basics of Solid. I know that'll be a repetition for some of the folks here, but we happen to think there will be a lot of new people joining us today, and we thought it'd be good to give them a primer before we hop into the really cutting-edge new stuff being done by TNE. So if this is your first time joining us here at Solid World, very welcome. Jesse will take you over exactly the kind of stuff that we discuss around here. And if you're already been in Solid and with us for a good while, don't switch off too quickly, because we have some really exciting stuff coming right after this explanation from Jesse, with some cutting edge stuff that I think will be really interesting to anyone who's involved with Solid from the folks over at TNE. With that, I'll kick over to Jesse.
Thanks, Roberto. So I'm going to keep this very short and sweet because I know you're keen to hear from TNE, and as you say, I'm just the primer. So what I'm going to do is run through what is Solid. It was born out of Tim Berners-Lee's lab in 2014 at MIT as a way of fixing the web at that point in time. And the challenge that we saw was fragmentation of data across all of the different service providers that we had. And Tim and his research group were looking for a way to help center data back around consumers so that we can reuse it across all of our online platforms. And the solution that they came to was this thing called a pod, a personal online data store, which is a standard that sits on top of all of our existing web technologies. And a pod lets AI agents and websites and apps read and write data back to this single source of truth about you, with the permissions that consumers set. It helps break down those data silos across service provider platforms. And now in the age of AI, it also helps break down the silos across all of your different LLM providers. So there's a range of benefits to Solid, as I just mentioned. It helps reduce data silos. It reduces the surface attack for different places where your data can be breached. Because it's an open standard, we get around vendor lock-in, so you can switch your provider of Solid. And you can do things like view all of the consents that you have given of your data online so that you don't have to give all or nothing consent. You can say consent to just your data being used for service personalization without it being used for marketing or training of new AI models. And what I'd like to do is run you through a very quick demo of, and this is a Figma chart to be perfectly clear because it's got all things nicely in one place. All of the things I'm about to show you exist in some shape or form in applications in the ecosystem, but we prefer to show it as a Figma chart so that it's easy to walk through. And what we have as the first page here is a pod management application. Within this pod management application, you can view all of the data that exists in this online storage that is Solid and get a dashboard of all of your data. For instance, we can look at the work and study field and see things like our diplomas, where we could go to It's Me, which is an identity provider, and add our degree information into our pod. So we've got signed information about our study experience. We can see things like our work experience that we normally have in platforms like LinkedIn, a personality test should we choose to do one. We can see things like mobility data with driver's licenses, an overview of our financial data, which I'm sure we'll be hearing a bit more about from TNE at some point, with things like payment cards, transactions, stocks, and income and expenses. Or we can also see body and health data with an integrated view of things like our weight measurements our vital data with our heart rate, our activity with our runs recorded from Strava and our Garmin Connect, and an overview of our medication if we're integrated with health platforms like the NHS here in the UK. So we can see our prescriptions and our vaccination history, as well as allergies and treatments that are upcoming. We can see this same kind of integrated view of our data across different platforms with things like music data, calendar data integrated, or our social data integrated across Facebook and LinkedIn or Instagram style platforms with all of our contacts stored in one place via Solid. What we can then do, because Solid is an open standard and provides a standardized way for applications and AI agents to interact with our data, is switch over to a new website like Randstand, which is a HR application. And we can observe a couple of things. Firstly, we've got this little login button at the top, and we can see that we're still logged in as Alex Wilder, which was our identity when we were in this pod management application. In the same way that we keep our Chrome identity when we go across Chrome application, Google identity when we go across Google applications in the Chrome browser. We can now choose to share our data. In particular, we're going to share with the HR application our diploma, our work experience, our personality test results, and our city of residence. And our browser is acting as a trusted piece of software that can manage the permissions on my pod so that I can share that data now with Randstand, and it can use those data points to match me with 3 vacancies that specifically apply to me rather than showing me thousands of different job opportunities that exist on their platform that I then have to search through. So I can now select this administrative role that suits my profile, apply for the role, and automatically share the data points, which are my email, my phone number, and my signed diploma needed to sign up for this opportunity. I can share that data and automatically complete the sign up process rather than needing to go through this process manually all of the time. There's a range of applications here. I'm not going to run through them all now, but in your own time, I will drop a link into the chat and you can walk through this demo yourself or see an extended version of this demo. We've got an example for a Netflix style demo where you can get more personalized recommendations based on the data of your pod, a financial demo where you can get an overview of your financial records, a health demo where you can do things like automatically sign up for appointments based on live health records from your Garmin and other health devices. And the one I will talk through is Luna, which is a personalized agentic platform on top of Solid. So in this demo, what we can choose to do is personalize the LLM by sharing with it data points, including our personal data, our work and study data, our mobility data, financial data, and all of these other data points that you can see. Increasingly, this can be done even with local models running on our machines if you're averse to sharing this data with LLM providers. And we can choose to ask this LLM to make a meal plan for my family for the week. Because I've got data points already sitting in my pod describing my family unit, there's 4 people, my calendar, what kind of foods that I like, my budgets, and my location, it can come back with an immediate recommendation of a plan for the week. Furthermore, it can come back with details of a suggested shop, a pickup time, and the cost, so that I can just instruct it to proceed with making that order on my behalf, authorizing the payment, and having the grocery pickup scheduled in my calendar. The last thing I can then do is come back into my pod management application and see where all of my data has been shared across all of these online platforms, such as Randstand, which was the HR application, and the media application. I can come into Randstand and say, turn off access to my personal email if I no longer want them to have access to that data point. Or I could choose to revoke that data entirely from Randstand's platform so that they no longer have access to any of the private data points that exist in my pod. So that's a brief overview of what the Solid user experience can look like. And with that, I'm going to hand back to Roberto to keep the show running. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jesse, for that explanation. I think that is just about as brief and clear as we've made it through that. Those around Solid for a while might have seen that presentation before. It's a brilliant thing. I found it much easier to explain Solid after that. So thank you, Jesse. With that in mind, and having seen what Solid is at its core and how it can work, I'm really excited now to be introducing our main guests for this webinar, which are the folks over at TNE. That's the letters TNE.ai. We have Rich, who brings over 30 years of enterprise software experience and more than 10 years building AI software production to scale. He's the founder of TNE. It's his third venture. And it spans automotive, unmanned aerial vehicles, how next-generation AI interacts with AI operating systems with the sovereign core. It's really interesting work they're doing off at TNE. I feel like every time I get to speak to Rich or to Kang, I see brand new, exciting things, very often involving Solid. So I'm really keen to see what they have to present to us today. Along with Rich is an AI architect at TNE called Kang. He specializes in enterprise AI architecture, LLM applications, and the design of scalable AI systems for real-world development. With that said, gentlemen, I'll hand it over to you two, Kang and Rich.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you just fine.
Okay, good. Great. I'm so happy to be talking with you, speaking with everyone on this call. I think we are at the edge of a new era, and I just want to explain the two reasons why and the two demos you're going to see. The fact is, a new AI is going to require a new kind of operating system that allows you to access these AIs, do it safely, and also access your data safely. I can't tell you how the world has changed so much because everyone wants data from everyone on this call. Today, only 1.5% of all the data in the world is actually on the public internet, and all these LLMs have already ingested it all, and they're dying for you to type in your health data, your every email, everything you ever own, because that is how these models are going to get trained. So we at TNE are dedicated to the mission of making trustworthy, effective, native AI that is also completely private and secure, which is why we're working with the Solid Foundation and the Open Data Institute. The key thing is, what you'll see is an integration where you can ask a AI agent, the way Kang's going to show you. It will ask you some questions and then help you write an application. So you don't have to look through SDKs, you don't have to read things. It's really an assistant that's going to help you do this. You'll also see then that we were able to call it agentically, which basically means over the internet you can call it for service. You can pay for it digitally. So we're really moving Solid into the full digital, highly connected world. What does that mean for everyone here? That means if you have a blob of data or something, you can make sure it's in a Solid pod. You can give it temporary access. You can pull it in and out, but the data is yours. The second thing that you're going to see is how it's integrated into a project we call Orion, which is a complete zero-knowledge infrastructure. What does that mean? That means as soon as you put the data in, it's encrypted in an Intel and AMD processor. It's encrypted in the NVIDIA GPUs. It's encrypted everywhere. So literally, you can run this compute in a cryptographically secure way on any cloud provider and no one can access your data. And so Solid is very, very important to us because it gives us that at-rest encryption protection, and then we take care of the rest with our project called Orion. With that being said, Kang, would you like to show them some of these some of the things we've done? And we're very proud of it. TNE.ai is our URL. You can hit me up at RichTong1 at LinkedIn. We're happy to answer questions and so forth. Thanks.
Yeah, certainly. So let's kick things off. Okay, so just let me share my screen. Okay, so first up, just a quick introduction. We have the Solid Web Bot, which helps developers, enterprises, and hobbyists discover and build on Solid. So let's check out how we can build Solid apps and deploy agents using the Solid Bot. I have a pre-recorded video here, so enjoy.
Hi everyone, real pleasure to be here, and I'm very excited to showcase TNE's demo of the Solid Web Bot. So this will be a demo where I'll go through the core features of the Solid Web Bot and also a bit of rationale behind why we designed it the way we did. So simply put, the Solid Bot is developed to help developers enterprises and hobbyists discover and build on the Solid protocol. So on the landing page here, we have a brief introduction of the problems of current web applications and how they collect everything, keep it forever, and monetize later. And how Solid can actually improve on this by providing privacy and true control of your data in the form of pods. There's also a short overview of its history along with some examples of how Solid is being used in real-world applications today. So the webbot has two main features. First, the main chatbot, and also an agent-to-agent or A-to-A interface, where other AI agents can actually discover and interact with this bot programmatically. So here's the main chatbot, and let me show some examples of how it works. So we can start off very simple by asking it, tell me more about Solid and how it works. And you can see the bot explains accordingly. The core architecture of Solid, concepts like pods, data privacy, web ID, ownership, and so on and so forth. But now let's try something a little more unorthodox. Let us ask it, I want to build a real-time multiplayer game backend with strict latency requirements. Just illustrating this to show the design philosophy behind Solid. And notice what it outputs. Solid is the wrong architecture for this. Here's what you should use instead. WebSockets, CRDTs. But it does state here the one case where Solid might fit if you're building a turn-based game and latency doesn't matter. Then Solid could be a potential solution. But the main idea I'm getting at here is that the bot correctly does not try to force Solid into every problem. It still explains Solid ideas like data ownership, privacy, and the open web, but also checks if the use case actually makes sense. So in this particular case, it doesn't make sense 100%. Well, there are certain elements and tweaks if you change to your prompt where you can in fact use Solid, but it's not a one-to-one use case. On the flip side, let us type in something that is indeed a very apt use case for Solid, which is, I want to build an app that stores medical records where only patients and doctors can have access, and see what it outputs. You can see the bot says that this is exactly what Solid was built for. Medical records are highly sensitive, patient-owned, portable, shared access. So it shows us a preview of how it will work. Technical stack details, proof that this works, and it prompts us further, so we'll just answer these questions so that we can see actually how it develops a working prototype. So I would like a working prototype. So here it is giving instructions on how to start a pod server, how to create an account, and here it is installing the necessary apps that we need. So it's currently generating files. You can see these files here are actual code snippets that you can use. But yeah, so essentially these two previous prompts that I used are very important because it's something I wanted to highlight, because it actually plays into the design philosophy of the Solid bot, which is an honest evangelism model. And this is very important because the bot will always lead with Solid principles, but it also knows when to stay clear when Solid isn't the right fit for a particular use case. At the end of the day, we want to educate users and promote the use of Solid, but in a way that's credible and trustworthy, which are actually very much aligned with the core principles Solid was built on. Tim Berners-Lee famously said that the web is more a social creation than a technical one. designed for a social effect to help people work together and not as a technical toy. So we really wanted to honor this vision, which is why this entire application is built on this evangelism model. So this is a good visualization of the model. Again, it's not about selling Solid. It's about educating, qualifying whether a use case is suitable. And this can be defined in stage 3 here, which we call an honest fork, which simply says if Solid is the right fit, proceed to build. If not, route to the right tool with no hard sell, which is what we did, which is what actually the bot did when we told it to build a real-time multiplayer backend system with strict latency requirements. And at the end of the day, we want to ultimately evangelize users and turn them from builders to community members. So ideally, they join the Solid community forum, learn about the Solid project more in depth, learn about INRUP, and so on and so forth. So yeah, this is a good summary of the honest evangelism model, which really defines how the Solid bot was built. So let's go into the second core feature, which is the A2A or agent to agent interface. So A2A, what is it? As mentioned earlier, it is a standard developed by Google actually that allows agents to interact with one another programmatically. So why implement an A2A interface? The simple answer is this: the way we interact with the web is changing, and we're moving toward a world where most API traffic doesn't come from just browsers or humans anymore, but from AI agents. A traditional chatbot waits to be discovered, but with A2A, this bot becomes something very different. It becomes a node in an emerging agent ecosystem. And again, think about it deeply. This aligns very perfectly with what Solid was built. What Solid is actually. Solid was never meant to be just a product. It's a protocol designed for interoperability and decentralization. What A2A does is actually extend this idea one step further. So it's not just used by humans and apps, but for machines. It means that any agent on any platform in any language, of course with strict security requirements, which you will see later on, that can actually discover and use the Solid bot and its capabilities programmatically. Yes, it also does offer autonomous payments and scaling these payments at scale, which are actually secondary features of the app, which I'll also explain later on. But the main idea is that it stays true to the design philosophy of Solid, and it also extends capabilities one step further. So not to go so much into technical detail about A2A, but simply how it works is that other AI agents can discover the Solid bot's capabilities. So the Solid bot actually has these 7 what we call skills, and these are the capabilities that define the Solid bot. And other AI agents can discover the Solid bot's capabilities and skills via something called an agent card. So an agent card, you can think of it as a business card, but instead of being for humans, it's machine readable. So this agent card defines the outputs and inputs. It defines what the bot can do, how to call it. Do this code here. This is the command for calling and discovering the agent card. This is the command for sending a task. And once the agent is actually discovered, or once the Solid bot agent is actually discovered, other AI agents can call this bot programmatically using the JSON-RPC standard. And depending on the request, this is now we introduce the idea of X402. So depending on the request, there may be a small compute cost. So X402 micropayments, which enables micropayments at scale, is actually a standard that enables agents to make lightweight programmatic payments. For example, using cryptocurrency. So in our initial pricing model here, we charge 10 cents USDC. If an agent were to call the Solid Web bot, if an agent were to call the Solid Web bot's skill 4 here, Solid 4 scaffold app, which actually enables the agent to build a complete working Solid app. So for this particular skill, you'll be charged 10 cents USDC. And it's all enabled because of X402 micropayments, which is also the third key feature of the solid web bot, and it also part of the larger A-to-A interface. And finally, another important aspect I like to highlight is KYA, or Know Your Agent. So as we move into a world of autonomous agents interacting with each other, security becomes extremely critical. KYA is an emerging framework that ensures agents can trust who they're interacting with before executing any task. So before this bot accepts a request from another agent, it runs 3 checks. So this is just a simulation here. It checks the identity, behavior, and payment. It checks, is the agent really who it claims to be? Is the request within the agent's declared capabilities? And has the required X402 fee been received? All 3 must pass before we allow another agent to interact with the solid bot via this A-to-A interface. And thank you. I've come to the end of this demonstration. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. That's our first demo. I'll be happy to answer questions about it later on, but here's our second demo. So as Rich has mentioned previously, we're talking about systems built on our Orion system. And so this is the Health Guardian agent. So let's see how an AI agent can deliver deeply personalized health insights from sensitive data without ever retaining it. So on the surface, this feels just like any advanced conversational AI, but under the hood, this application has no database, no user table, and no memory between sessions. Every conversation begins with zero knowledge and ends with zero knowledge. Intelligence without possession, as we like to call it. So yeah, let's check it out.
Directly from your solid pod. Let's see what it can do. First, we ask it to introduce itself. Agent responds, describing its scope: glucose, sleep, and mood analysis. Now we ask for something real, a week of sleep data. Before it touches anything, it stops and asks us to authenticate. It can't just help itself to the data. That hands us off to the solid pod's own login page, not the AI's. We sign in with our web ID directly with the pod provider. Credentials and consent stay between us and the pod. The agent never sees a password, only what we choose to authorize it to read. Back in the terminal, we let the agent know we're authenticated, and it picks up right where we left off. And there it is, a full week of sleep, pulled live from the pod. Averages, the outlier night, the pattern across the week, all sourced from data the agent has never seen before this moment. Next, a harder question, this time about mood. The agent doesn't hedge. It scans the mood log and comes back with a flat pattern. Every irritable day is a Tuesday. No exceptions. So we push further. Why Tuesday? This is where it gets interesting. The agent doesn't just look at Tuesday. It looks backward to Monday night. It finds the real cause, short sleep the night before, which drives a glucose spike and the energy crash the next day.
Thank you. And those are our 2 solutions. We really honored the Solid, and we feel that these are both agentic AI solutions and healthcare solutions that we work very hard with. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Wei Kang. Thank you, Rich. Rich, do you have anything to add there, or can we start heading into questions?
I think Wei Kang did a great job, and we're happy to answer any questions about the implementation and the great work that ODI is doing.
All right. Thank you, Rich. So as a reminder, folks, please, if you could add your questions into the chat, my colleague at the ODI will pump them right over to me. So, but maybe while you do, I can start off with a question of my own, which is, I was wondering if we could dig a bit into what your vision is with Orion at TNE, and a bit on how Solid fits into that vision, right? You've spoken a bit about how it works well for data at rest. We've seen in the demo how it can be used as essentially a replacement for the memory on a given AI, bringing in your actual data to the work that it does there.
Mhm.
At what other points does Solid make sense? And is there any nuance there that you might want to put a lantern on?
Yeah, I think that first of all, having data that is really owned by a particular user or a particular organization, I think is our basic view for how the data should be handled in this agent era. E.g., you should own your data, and so we are completely subscribed to the Solid mission. So the decision we made, just to explain our system, so the first demo you saw using something called Compass. So that is a AI meta harness of approximately 2,500 different agents that essentially are designed for every job and every person in a company to be their assistant. The second question, after you build that, the question is, where's it going to run? So our system is model independent. Our agents can be tuned to run on Claude or OpenAI or any open source model. But the question is, when they're reading data and it's very personal, where does it go? And where does it come from? And so Wei Kang's point about we just want to get the data, read it, process it in an encrypted way, and then have the data vanish is really one of the core ideas. And then all you're doing is returning results. I do think that I think we all know on this call how dangerous what Wei Kang demoed on the second one if that data got to be in the training data. So this is a way to ensure, and now I just want to make 2 points. First is, if you are sending your data to a foundation model, there is no such guarantee. So once it crosses that boundary, who knows where it goes? So our Orion system is designed around two ideas that for most computing over the next, as its AI operating system is being created, you really want the AI to be encapsulated as well in a secure boundary. So it's just processed in something you understand, and then the data just pops out of at rest. It's processed, and as Wei Kang showed, then only the results are visible. So I think that's probably the biggest subtlety, which is we don't want to show the raw data. We don't want to pass it to a model. We just want the results to come out, and the results could be on that glucose test, you're fine or not fine. That's okay. I think the second aspect that is a little complicated, but I just want to make sure people understand, is this agent-to-agent world is more complicated because now you're handing these results on to somebody else. And so what Wei Kang showed in terms of agent identity is very important. You want to know it's really your doctor's agent. Now, in terms of X402, I know there's a question here. Just to be clear, X402 is a currency trading system. So it's not in the pod. It's when the data comes out and you've got a live active agent, and instead of just giving the agent the rights, you may want to charge somebody for it, right? So this enables a revenue model for people on the internet. Those of you who are enterprise developers, usually the way you pay for this thing is you go write a contract, you spend a gajillion hours figuring this out. This just says, I want to process, and I just make this example up, that agent that Wei Kang had, that's the evangelism agent, you can just pay 2 or 3 cents for it and it just happens automatically. So instead of having to figure out how to pull your wallet out, the agent actually does that for you, and we use a digital backend.
Okay. It's really interesting. I could keep asking you questions about Orion and the place Solid has in it for ages, but I think I'll move over to the questions we have here. I'll just briefly say that I really connect with the way you describe Solid and the role of Solid here, which is to get data essentially, in one sense, out of the way so that we can have all of the data we want and all the privacy we want at once. But at the same time, so something we talk about a lot when at the ODI, which is moving data back to the place where it makes most sense for it, which is as a private good that belongs to a person that by default is not shared and moved around, right? It's odd to me that the web today assumes that the data is going to fly everywhere. And I think Solid is all about taking back that control, and it's really lovely to see real applications that can take that forward. With that, let me move into the questions we have in the chat. let's see who's first. So Paul asks, doesn't the data, once read, still get sent to the prompt as a prompt to the LLM?
These are really good questions.
Yeah.
Why don't I take that, and Wei Kang, you can take some of the other ones. Here's the way to understand it. If you are using, I'll pick on Claude for a second, then you are not secure, because as soon as that data goes to Claude, it's gone. The application we're building with Orion says, no, we're actually going to run the models internally in, say, a doctor's office or somewhere. So at that point, we can do something very different, which is when the information goes in, it actually goes in encrypted, and the LLM is also encrypted. So in essence, even if you looked at all the bits that are running, this new NVIDIA thing called zero knowledge infrastructure guarantees cryptographically that the only thing that can actually read it is that process in that GPU. And as soon as that's ended, the key goes away and no one can figure out what's happened unless you have a quantum computer. So this is a very important concept that we think zero knowledge infrastructure plus solid is the right combination, because zero knowledge infrastructure protects the data in flight and solid protects the data at rest. So that is a very important thing to understand. Now, I just want to make a comment. You have to make sure that everything that it touches is encrypted. One of the reasons we built Orion is as soon as you're reading the data from solid, it's running in an Intel protected ZKI infrastructure. As soon as that data, the LLM prop, for instance, is handed over to the LLM, that LLM is running in your infrastructure fully protected. So this is not going to work with closed foundation models up in the cloud. Here's the good news, though. Today, for most enterprise applications, for the vast majority, you don't need the very highest performance. And if you think about it, it makes sense. I hate to say it, I'm not a rocket scientist, but doing billing and accounting does not require rocket science or quantum physics or anything else like that. So what we do is we take the models, we tune them for those specific uses, and then we can use small models, open source models. For instance, NVIDIA has a great class of models called Nemotron, open source, open weight, a Western model, so you don't have to worry about security concerns. And we think that's really the future for data processing and data at rest.
Cool. It's a really complete answer. Thank you so much, Rich. Okay, let's see. We have here. Well, Fatih, I think your question has been addressed on X402. So why don't we go on to Siraj?
I can add. Yeah, I can add.
If you have something to add, please do.
Yeah. So a technical implementation would be you implement this dual layer strategy. So you put an X402 aware reverse proxy in front of the pod server. And so you keep the pod as a data layer and the X402 proxy as the access control layer. So two layers here, the pod as the data layer and the proxy as the access control layer. So this proxy holds a solid session for a service account. It verifies all the payment, and then it can read and write the pod on behalf of the paying agent. You have to answer your question a bit more technically. And yeah, I think the subsequent question is about the 7 solid skills. Yes, these are skills introduced by our solution. So we want to make our bot as granular as possible. So instead of just building a scaffold, instead it can read its use case, it can direct it to other solutions. So instead of, we created this idea of having 7 granular skills. This is subject to change. If we find that there are other use cases related to a solid bot, we can create agents for it. But yeah, to put it simply, these are introduced by our solution.
Okay. Thank you, Wei Kang. Next from Paul Worrell. Are web IDs your agent IDs? I think we're going back to that A to A conversation. I'm not sure.
Sorry.
Are web IDs your agent IDs? I think Paul.
Oh yeah, I can
in
cover
that
this
in
one.
that
So,
interact. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So it turns out that the agent-to-agent system has its own ID system. So we have to respect the A2A protocol in this particular case. Now, you can actually use the web IDs as the agent IDs, but this is a bit of a translation layer. A2A has its own system for both query, discovery, et cetera, et cetera. So this is really sort of mating, if you want to think about it, Roberto, 3 protocols, right? X402 for currency, the solid protocols underneath, and then the A2A protocols. So it requires a little bit of magic. However, the concept of having a web ID GUID it has to be very well captured in the agent system. I also want to comment, the web ID, remember, is tied to the pod, not to the agent. So just a small technical detail. The agent is different than the pod. And I think, Wei Kang, your explanation was great. An agent is acting to be the X402 gateway, and then the pod is underneath.
Okay. Yeah, oh, we lost you there, Rich? Okay. Yeah, that's a good nuance. I mean, very often when we're talking about Solid and the way the web can work, we talk about web IDs as being that center identifier for an individual. But of course, the individual might not always be the same as the agent that individual is contracting and using. So that interaction between the web ID and the agent is exactly what's happening. It's an accurate reflection of the conversation. To my eye, again, we can have a conversation about how that fits into Solid, but that makes good sense to me. We have a question here from Ryder Dane. What in your experience has helped most to lower the bar for individuals to adopt a pod for themselves? Which I suppose is a question on uptake and usage of the technology, right?
Let me just, do you want to answer that way, Kang, or I can give it a crack either way?
You can do it.
Yeah, I think the issue is always with, just to give you my background, I've spent 12 years at Microsoft doing product management for Windows, Office, and all the server products. I think individual adoption is one of the trickiest problems in our industry because people don't like to do setup. They just don't, right? So one of the things that we've been doing, remember, we're mainly focused on the enterprise. And so our mission has been, if you're in a bank, we mainly do financial services, how can we auto deploy these pods for individuals, departments, and so forth? So they don't have to, and it's much more difficult with an individual because, of course, you don't have that same top-down thing. Since I have a pod myself, I can tell you, I think the friction at the beginning is really the key issue for Solid. And it's really a hard problem. I don't think there's any great answer. I'll tell you, there are probably 1 million people right now in various conference rooms around the globe trying to figure out how they get their app and bootstrap into something. I think that, though, that there are two different things. One is enterprise adoption of pods, and the other is individual adoption of pods. I think the individual adoption of pods, the things you're doing with governments and so forth, make a lot of sense to me, right? Because then it's sort of a requirement, it's part of an application. Enterprise is a lot easier for us because we can deploy and say all the proprietary data, for instance, for a customer is actually kept in a pod. So they don't really control the pod, but it's sort of a proxy that a bank can keep track of, and that lets them have more security. So there's sort of multiple levels, but I don't think it's easy to get the average person to just use something like this.
Yeah, I agree with you there. This is very much my opinion. There are many opinions around Solid, but my opinion tends to be that this is where we have a great advantage as part of the Solid community to be working on something that is infrastructure and not necessarily application. It's a bit like the web when it started. A lot of people used it without knowing what it was, but they knew who had recommended it to them. Companies they trusted, governments they trusted were on this platform. And so they thought, well, yes, I trust this bank with my data already. If it tells me that this application is safe, I'll use it and I'll believe that it's safe. And maybe several years on, they look back on that application and they see why that trust was founded, right? So to work with organizations that have that trust, that have that relationship, and essentially enable them to do better by their clients, I think is a good way to get Solid out there in the world. There are people who care about their safety, about their web privacy online. These are people who might want to look at Solid first and use it because it's private. But for the grand majority of the world, just giving them a better service, letting them do something they've never done before, and doing it with people they already know and trust, I think is an excellent way of going about it. So I think it's essentially echoing what you said. This is violent agreement, Rich, which is going through the enterprise and and things people already understand. Let's see what we have here. Oh, I have a confusing question because I'm not sure if it's from Paul or from Peter, which is, for this Orion platform, is there any global chart of what LLMs can be accessed, as well as the inventory of data types, such as documents, spreadsheets, apps, etc., which can be connected with the platform, and then protected via setting up Solid or interrupt parameters? Seems like it's from Peter. This is from Peter Campbell.
Yeah, why don't I take
hand
this
it
one?
over to you.
So we haven't really talked about how we orchestrate our applications. So think of Orion as the bottom layer that's really doing the infrastructure work as you described. At the
Yeah.
top layer, our agents are running a project we call Compass. And this is where all the guardrails live. So for instance, yes, there is a chart of all the LLMs and who can call them. We call them object agents, right? So the objectification of agents. There's a list. The way to think about it is we think of agents just like people, right? Or
Mhm.
in code just like people. So there's a full ACL list. What am I allowed to access? What's available? There's a document management system. There's all these other things. And when an agent starts up, and this is one of the unfortunate things about where we are in the wild, wild west, which is today,
Yeah.
an agent, as soon as it gets in charge of your system, can do anything. For those of you who don't know, there's a recently was just showed with the Claude co-work. The LM had, by the way, today you should take the patch, but it did escape the sandbox that Claude has and can access anything on your machine. And it's those kinds of things that are really deadly for an enterprise. So that list of access controls, yes, then you can map it to the parameters underneath, like whatever Solid has in terms of access parameters and so forth. So we are at work on these access controls. I want to make one other comment, which is it turns out just access controls aren't enough because you have to also look at the behavior of these agents. And I'll give you the simple example. Having been to ODI, people have a card key and it's great. But if you start taking all the furniture out, people ask questions. So even though you have access rights to that door, you may not want all the furniture lifted out. So we have another system called VLS, which is our security system that actually looks at the agent behavior. And if you start to do something strange, like access every healthcare pod in the system, you have to ask questions. So the answer is yes, we have an access control thing, role-based access and so forth. And on top of that, we've layered a behavioral modeling system. Actually, it's just another set of agents that say, hey, Roberto's agent has never done this before. I wonder what's going on. So I think you're going to have to think about multiple layers of this.
I see. That's really interesting. And as a follow-on, I wonder, how are you dealing with the data of that second layer, right? Then that is data about the system in which the agents exist, rather than data that belongs to any one individual, and yet it might pull in metadata from those individuals. Is there a it starts getting
you're meta all the
recursively
way
more
down.
complicated.
Just talk about our behavioral system. It is not actually looking at the data, it's looking at the behavior of the
course.
agents. So it doesn't need to know you're carrying out a bunch of vacuum cleaners or terminals. It just knows that you're carrying a bunch of junk out and it doesn't seem right. Since there's a technical group here, most of the time an agent, as an example, is accessing a megabyte of data at a time, and suddenly at 3 a.m. in the morning, it's moving terabytes.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to wonder. So it's sort of that level of check, because remember, because of the way Solid and the zero knowledge encryption stuff, we can't actually see the data unless we have the user key. So we have to rely on that kind of analysis to figure out what's going on. Yeah.
Really interesting. I mean, we seem to have one more question here from Paul. Do you have an opinion on WAC or ACP as access control for the pods? Is it something you've encountered or had to choose between?
We haven't. This is where a little bit we rely on ODI and
I see.
you guys to tell us what we should be using. So we have, just so you know, we have a very close relationship, obviously, Roberto, with you and Jesse and everyone else. So when these questions come up, and Wei Kang knows this, we just send you a note saying, well, what should we be doing? So I think that our basic view here is we want to have a good reference implementation that can work for all the Solid implementations. These details in terms of performance and access control will be somewhat application specific, I think. Right. So that is one of the hard things we've learned is try to stay on the main path. And then if there's a necessity to change, then we'll go ahead and make that change. But I'm happy to say your documentation's been great. We've been using in fact, just so you know, the way the agent was trained was it read all the ODI documentation. That's where the actual training corpus came from. It didn't just, pop out and understand this. So you can think of it as it was read, we tuned the agent for it. And so literally when you guys change, Solid 27 or whatever the heck it is, then the agent will change too.
I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear there's been some good consumption of that. Of course, all the work we do at the ODI is strongly influenced and in partnership with the folks in the community. We are, very often we'll give our own opinion, but that is informed by, hours and hours of conversation with folks in the Solid community that have led us in particular ways. But it's really good to hear that those digests have been getting somewhere. Okay. I'm looking at my clock and I'm looking at my questions, and I'm thinking we can give folks one last moment to ask any last questions as we walk out the door. But, I'm getting a question from Jeremy Kane. Where are those ODI digests? Jeremy, maybe we can accompany this. We can accompany that out with the rest of what we do later. These are, I believe the stuff Rich is referring to are the ODI opinionated guides that we put out a little while ago, mostly around our hackathons, which we've been doing recently just to help folks get started with Solid quickly. Those are all public, and I'll throw you a link soon. We can put that in with the follow-up from this event. But with that in mind, yes, I see that we're putting TNE's website up on the chat as well, which is also very useful. Okay, wait. One last question from Paul, if you allow me, Rich, and then I'll get you out right on time. Which is, Rich, you mentioned encryption for the pod content. Could we learn a little bit more about that?
I'm going to leave this to Wei Kang. Talk a little bit how you extract
Super.
the data, Wei Kang, and how it works.
Okay, so encryption for the pod contents. So sorry, specifically what do you mean by that? Like, how is it?
I think.
What's the?
I think so. I think the question is, how are you encrypting the data within the pod and then dealing with that handoff within it? 'Cause I believe that's not standard in Solid, but definitely something folks have played with before. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mentioned about this dual layer, right? So first off, we have the data layer, which is the solid pod. And then we have another access control layer. So actually that access control layer can also function as a check on the security. So what it does is that with data being held in the data layer, you have this access control layer that determines whether data can pass through a service account, whether payments can be verified on the X304, and whether read or write instructions can be done on behalf of the agent. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Thank you, Wei Kang. I believe it does, but
I want to say like this is one solution we used. An alternative is you could use CSS solutions, but a solution that we decided on is this dual layer architecture.
The dual layer, yeah, which makes good sense. I mean, I'll leave it there because we're coming right up against time. What I will say is that I see that you have both shared your email addresses as well as the website. So I'll encourage anyone in the chat who still has questions, who still has ideas, to please have a read of the website. If you still have questions after that, drop Rich or Wei Kang an email. I know from personal experience that they're very happy to answer. They're really friendly and nice guys. So thank you again so much, Rich, Wei Kang. I'll thank Jesse as well, even though he's had to drop off to go fix some stuff with solidcommunity.com for this wonderful session. It's been a pleasure having you over. I hope you've all enjoyed Solid World July. And yeah, I'll see everyone at the next one. Bye, folks.